blessings. You did it.
We did it. We out here.
Come here, come here, come here. I got you. Oh my goodness gracious, Celeste. Oh man, you're awesome. You're awesome.
You. I'm so happy to be having this conversation. I feel like you're like Jedi behind the scenes doing all these things and you're interviewing a lot of people a lot of the time. And now this is kind of an opportunity to get the behind the scenes of what's going on in your life, with all of the books that you've written recently. So I feel really excited to dive deep into that with you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's dive in. Let's dive in. Like I know you used to diving in, You know what I'm saying? I mean, Celeste, you used to diving in. You going in. Yeah.
I like to drums just like big chilling like this, and I'm just like, yo, but what about that? What about this emotion? What about this?
Hmm. Hmm. But you're not scared of the water, you know. You're not scared of the deep end. You go in. Yeah.
Mermaid life.
There you go.
So I wrote down all the books that you published and like the dates that you published, and um, I kind of want to dive into the first section of them, what most people might recognize as the ones with the blue covers.
Mhm.
So four of them, and correct me if I'm wrong for any of this, but to me, I saw four covers that have the blue with a picture under it. And the first one was A Hunger for Freedom, How Fasting Can Lead to a Healthier Life, published in May 2022. Beginnings, Embracing Life Beyond Food, published in August of this year, 2024. And then there was Pranic Living Unveiled, The New Way of Nourishment, published a month later, so September of this year. And then just recently, this week, was Food Freedom, The Final Frontier. So that's one, two, three, four books that are within that style. And so my question to you was, is there a connection between those four books, like some type of like consistent or consecutive story being told, or what's the difference between those books? Because they're all very related to fasting and breatharian beginnings and chronic living in general. So I was curious what the bigger picture is for all of those books.
Absolutely. That's the correlation. You know, you nailed it. That is the connection. You know, they're all just different aspects, different, ways of viewing the perspective in the collective when it comes to chronic living, when it comes to breatharianism, when it comes to living on light, living on other sources, other forms of nourishment, living on energy, just a more vibrant and, vital existence. At least it has been for me. And I just enjoy putting the information out there because when I was learning about this lifestyle, I mean, there wasn't a crazy amount, there still isn't a crazy amount of information. So I noticed that there was a gap, just in the marketplace for people that were hungry for the information, but they weren't finding it, readily. There, have been people that have really paved the way and are still paving the way. People like Jazz Muheen, which they call the godmother of breatharianism. People like Elitam Elamine, which is one of my mentors. People like Ray Mayor. So reading their books, reading Hilton Hotima's book, which was before my time. I think that book was written before I was even born, Man's Higher Consciousness, and, Long Life in Florida, books like that, where he was talking about these things way back. And then reading books like now I have, Wiley Brooks' book, it's about breatharianism. And actually, it's interesting. If you look up that book on Amazon, I mean, they're selling it for like 5K, $5,000 right now, just for that book that I got. And I was able to get it at a nice low price, definitely not 5,000. But yeah, it's called Breathe and Live Forever. And it's a book on breatharianism by Wiley Brooks and Nancy Foss. So yeah, reading Ray Mayor's book, A Year Without Food, reading Ellie Tom, Human Photosynthesis 101, reading Jazz Muheen, Food of the Gods and Pranic Nourishment 101. All these books, like I was reading these books before I even started, writing my own, but it inspired me to venture out into this, land of being an author and to write something that could inspire someone the way that I was being inspired and motivated by reading all of this material from the people who have paved the way before me. So I'm honored, I'm very privileged just to be in the position to continue to let it spread. Yeah.
I know the books have impacted people worldwide, so I'm really grateful that you started writing, especially like recognizing the gap that is there. I feel like we all have this like very beautiful, specific gap that we could fill with our purpose, our light. And it's very unique. And so the way that you've been filling your own gap that you found has been really beautiful to see. Um, and I like that you're honoring, the people that paved the way and like also taking, like a humble approach to like, yeah, I'm just sharing my experience. And so with these books, I'm wondering, are they like a memoir format where you're sharing your personal experience, or is it so taking information from each of these people that you've been inspired from, like with your personal experience, or can you go into detail about like how the four books have kind of been outlined?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Celeste. Thank you for these questions. Yeah, so A Hunger for Freedom was more of like a systematic, logical, scientific approach to, different forms of fasting, different forms of energy work, qigong, and meditation, and just raising vibration. So there's different quotes throughout from different pranic people on the journey, on the path. But it's more of like a systematic, logical approach for somebody who just wants like from A to Z, like how do I get here to there? Like what are the tools? Like how can I use this? There's no rules, but are there some tools? Like that would be cool if I had a few tools, even though I'll make up my own rules. So that's that book, Hunger for Freedom. A Pranic Path, the Pranic Path and How to Grow It from the Mind of a Poet. That one is actually a poetry book, my first and only poetry book so far. And I read that mostly, I wrote that on my personal journey. So just me and my journey with pranic living, coming into the awareness that I could live, without solid food, and just what that journey looked like for me, but all in poetry format, so all in poetry form, poetry prose. So that's how that one goes. Then, Sun Gaze for Success, that was when I wrote even before all these. Finding Inner Peace, A Guide to the Wisdom Within. Those were a couple of my first ones that kind of got me into this, authorship land and gave me the confidence to know that I can, you know? Jesus, like we have so much at our disposal. If someone is watching this right now on their phone, you have all that I used, like everything that I used to create these books is right here. Like you're looking at it. This is what I used to do all this. And it was being channeled. A lot of this was being channeled through me. So I really can't take credit for a lot of it. It was just a flow. There was a flow state, and I knew that this was something that I had to put out. Like when your cup just runs over and you have to have some place to put it. Like it's just spilling from the overflow and you need somewhere for the energy to go. This was, where I started putting that energy. When it comes to another one you mentioned, let me see, Breatharian Beginnings, embracing life beyond food. Breatharian Beginnings, that was another one that was deeper into a memoir of myself and just how it all started for me. But it also has a lot of bits and pieces of quotes and experiences and testimonies that I got from people who spoke to me firsthand. So I actually went into people's DMs, like friends and different people on this journey, people who had interviewed in the past, and I had them send me voice memos, voice notes on their experiences with fasting, with chronic living, with just discovering their own awareness in their own journey. And what did it feel like for you? Like, what did that actually feel like? How did that experience shape you? How did it make you? Where did it take you? And how do you relate to this journey? What does pranic living mean to you? What is these words like breatharianism? What does that even mean to you? And when these people were giving me, opening their hearts and giving me their voice, I was able to, transcript their voice and put it into the book. So you're able to feel the energy of someone's voice being put into the book in the pages. So that was something that I was really privileged and honored that people would, take the time to really recount these experiences that were life-changing and transformative for them on every level, and that someone else gets to digest it as well. So that was Breatharian Beginnings. Then there's, of course, the book with you and I, Chronic Living Unveiled. You and me right there on the cover, you and me right there on the back, walking the beach out there at Long Beach. My goodness, this book has been awesome, The New Way of Nourishment, just because there were things that I went in even deeper into my own journey, things that I hadn't talked about in Breatharian Beginnings, that I just dived in further. I just kind of, Breatharian Beginnings might have been in like, the pool, you're going to the deep end. Chronic Living Unveiled, you got your scuba gear on, right? You got your scuba gear, you got your oxygen tank. We going in. We going in. Now, this newest one, Food Freedom, The Final Frontier, we're in the submarine now. We're in the submarine. We're going to where it's black at the bottom. You can't see anything, but we're seeing everything, in a completely new way. So I'm excited for people to pick that one up. And thank you so much, Celeste, just for your work and your diligence of just going through the whole thing meticulously, picking out, reframing, picking out different points, and just understanding how it could be more cohesive and more coherent for the person to understand. I really have to thank you because I had never had an editor before. I've been my own editor, I've been my own publisher, I've been my own, nobody else has been, helping me on that side of the spectrum. So it's been an honor. Yeah.
Been an honor for me too, like reading the book as I was going, and then also just playing with words. It was fun. It was a joy for me. So I appreciate you being open to, going from your one man band to being like, yo, like, have a guest, with the mic, just yeah, yeah, yeah. So I had so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hearing is the books before these ones with the blue covers were kind of a setup for your process of being like, wow, I can do this, and I can step into my authorship and just share what I know and trust that process and get used to the self-publishing situation. I'm sure it's a process. And then slowly, as you were writing each book, I love that you have a book with poetry because you're so poetic, just how you speak and how you do qigong. So feel really like that one's probably a really special one. It's different from all the other ones. I'm sure people talk to you about like, oh yeah, are you gonna put this in writing, or because you say so many poetic little rhymes that are just like so joyous and put a smile to people's souls. So there's those ones, and then as you were going to more of the blue covered ones, which aren't necessarily a series, what I'm hearing is they're more so just your progression. And so it started with interviewing people like directly and writing, particularly at the beginnings, and then slowly sharing your experience of like integrating all of that information. And then like the next one is like more, okay, this is my experience, this is what I've learned from people, and there's like some intellectual, like this is kind of getting into the reality of what this is like. And the last one is like, yo, this is how it is.
Yeah.
When I was editing this last one, it was just like, whoa, I didn't know that. Like I didn't, and I almost felt like even a little bit hesitant to share with some people because it is kind of a shock. Like for me, I'm open, I'm curious, I'm excited, and I believe, and I trust the process. Everyone's in their own stage of wherever they want to be. And like people that say they're not as open, or they're really struggling with their attachments with food, and maybe unaware of it being an attachment and using it as a coping mechanism, and it's like labeled as a disorder, or like in the circle or the cycle of going on diets and then gaining weight and then self-sabotage or self-hate. So like some people in those categories or like phases, I guess, would maybe find this last book quite triggering. Maybe 3 books quite triggering. But I feel like you write it so beautifully. So if people were to go into it with this open mindset and this open heart of recognizing that this is just someone sharing information and sharing their personal experience, sharing other people's personal experiences, which I really like because you have quotes on each chapter, and then stories about other people and their experiences. So it's not just you, you know, like it's like a mixture of everyone's like information and also just the historical like ancestrally like this has been going on for years, like so it's a solid mix. And so I pray that when people read these books, and this is why I found so valuable to talk about this, because maybe the kind of opening to it would read a book that is closer to the breatharian beginnings instead of just hopping straight into the food freedom. So I think this like back story or back information is important. But like overall, it's been really beautiful to see the transgression of your process. And so I'm so curious like how you felt like in your body and like with the creative flow with each of these books. I know like you're as you're writing all these books, you're also processing like being seen by others, and also this what I felt maybe briefly about like I don't know if like other people are gonna take this really well. Like I don't know if that's a factor that you felt at any point within writing these books, and then also just like within your journey on the project path and tapping into your creative flow. Like
Yeah.
so I'm curious how it's been within you. You shared the progression of the outlines of structure of each, and now I'm curious how you felt like when writing each book, like the progression of your personal transformation each book.
Yeah. Great question once again, Celeste. You're knocking this out of the park. You know?
God inside, you know, it's just it's so interesting to me and it's so beautiful, and I feel like other people would really love to hear and feel it too.
Yeah. I just love your curiosity. You know, I love it because, you know, not only do I find it admirable, I think it's very wise for people to ask questions, for people to be curious. But that's how I started. You know, it all started with curiosity. You know, it all started with just that childlike wonder, you know, the childlike wonder of what if, what may be, what could be, what is, you know? And what are the things that I've been told, or the things that I've been sold, or the ways I've been controlled in life that might not even be the way that I think it is, you know? So these were the curiosities that, you know, that came to me. Like one of my good friends says, you know, she always said, a curiosity came to me. You know, Jerome, a curiosity came to me. Her name is Nida, my friend Nida. So when it comes to the feeling that I was having, I mean, when it comes to backlash, because I read a book by Jericho Sunfire, or some people know him as Genesis Sunfire, and his book, you know, A Story of a Breatharian Warrior, he talks inside the book that I read about battling that, you know, the public perception and being in the public eye and not even wanting that, you know, like this was for him like a personal journey. He never even was setting out to write a book, but he ended up doing it because, you know, he was pressured and people, you know, really wanted him to talk about his experience. But I mean, he was under so much fire. Jasmine Heen, the same thing. She was under fire. You know, people who just wanted to discredit everything that she did, you know, or everything that she didn't do, and just wanted to find any holes that they could poke in her philosophy and say, no, this is wrong, and this is, you know, this is invalidating. You know, this is just, you know, it doesn't speak to anything that I live by. So there are people, and I definitely am one of those people that I enjoy my solitude. You know, I take solace in my own silence. I take solace in my own, you know, my own personal journey. I live a very solitary life. You know, I seem very outspoken. Of course I am. I can be in both worlds and I can be very sociable. I spend all day alone. You know, nobody's really with me. It's just me. So kind of being in this Sigma archetype of, you know, just the lone warrior, just out here, the one man band, right? Like we talked about, you know, before, just understanding that, hey, you know, this journey is for you. You know, the door that you walk through is for you. You can't reach back and drag your friends along. You can't reach back and drag your family members, your loved ones, the people that have been with you. You know, you can't take them through the door. The door is for you, you know? So that was a reality check for me when I first started this journey before any of these books really. Can you hear me? Okay. Before any of these books really came out, my parents, they had an intervention with me. because when I was being outspoken online, some of my family caught wind of it, and this was back when I even had a Facebook. I've since deleted my Facebook and just, you know, deleted everything off of there. But I was sharing my lifestyle on Facebook. One of my family members, she caught wind of it, and she told my mom and my father, and they both got on the phone with me, Celeste, and I'll always remember that feeling. Oh my God, I wasn't ready for that energy, you know? So I could handle a lot of other people's energy because, I mean, I've been by myself, you know, I can handle criticism from other people. That never stops me from doing what I'm going to do anyway, because I know deep down, I mean, everyone's living in their own reality. We're living in our own mentality, our own world of our own making. And so if I'm taking in something that somebody says to me personally, then I'm basically saying what that person says about me is more important than what I say about myself, right? What this person thinks about me is more important than what I think about myself. How this person feels about me, right? So it goes back to that feeling, as you were talking about. What is the feeling I had? The feeling I had writing these, exhilaration, right? Exhilaration, high vibration. I was like, God must want this. The universe must want me to put this out, because if they don't, I mean, it wouldn't have been in my heart to begin with. You know, the seed would not have been planted in my mind to begin with. The signs would not have been put in my face to begin with. And just the opportunity, I wouldn't have recognized it. You know, they talk about the RAS, your reticular activating system. Whatever you focus on the longest grows the strongest, right? What we focus on expands. So if I were to focus on the criticism and the judgment, I might never have done this, right? But if I focused on the people that, while I was giving my podcast episodes, my YouTube videos, the people that were commenting and saying these things like, Jerome, this is changing my life. Don't stop doing this. Keep doing this no matter what. Keep going. Even my friends who knew me back when I was in my teens and preteens, you know, years ago, decades ago, they said, Jerome, whatever you do, don't stop, right? That was the voice that I was listening to. So yeah, I could feel down about, you know, my parents having a whole intervention and screaming and, you know, crying and yelling on the phone, like, please stop this madness, you know, eat something, we'll send you money, just eat something. When I spent a good amount of time around them, now they're like, cool, Jerome's gonna be fine. You know, he's good. He's still our son. I'm still their son, you know? So they know that even though my lifestyle is different, I'm the same. Yeah.
So choosing what to focus on, even though it is difficult, especially when family members come at you like that with that type of energy. You've chosen to focus on the people that are saying, keep going, this is changing my life, don't stop. Oh, it warmed my heart even hearing you say it, because I could feel it. And it's like, whew, those comments really make a difference. They really do. And they kind of like sit in your subconscious, you know, and start growing their own roots and blooming, you know, and listening and watering it.
Mhm.
Clearly you've watered it and you have this whole forest growing, and it's been really beautiful to see.
Awesome. I'm glad. I'm glad.
I see the progression too of like it being so difficult at the beginning, and then, you know, start watering the beliefs of I can, and this is like me listening to God, and this inspiration is also rippling out to other people and they are receiving
Mhm.
it. Like within that flow, it's like continued lived experience of I want to keep, like it's still bringing me joy, you know? And so from that, I see it being a progression. And I'm wondering, because more recently you and I have spoken about tapping into this new creative flow state. And so uh, with each book, it's kind of like the first one, or I mean, you've had so many books, so I'm literally just picking kind of from the middle. And so like the Breatharian Begins, the Hunger for Freedom, the Chronic Living, Food freedom, these ones. like they started getting closer for the publishing dates. Like they're a month apart, August, September, October. So compared to the ones before, it was a year before.
Mhm.
What, like within you and your
Yeah.
process to be to knock these out in within a month? Can you share about your process? Because
Yeah.
otherwise, like, from the behind the scenes, friend to friend, like Jerome and I talk pretty often, and we would talk on FaceTime, and he would get in and out writing his books just on his phone with a little like extra keyboard.
Yeah, this keyword little thing. This thing, I take this thing. So this thing I got from Temu. You ever seen Temu? The Temu site? It's like kind of like it's like a Amazon, like a bootleg Amazon. So this thing, it just opens and folds. This is my laptop. I turned the cell phone into a laptop. This is literally my typewriter, you know? So I just go to a library, I would go to a cafe, I would go to a restaurant, I would go to wherever, and I would just start writing. And I mean, there were people in the restaurant, Celeste. And, I'm clearly not homeless, right? I clearly have a device like the keyboard. I'm typing on my cell phone. This is an iPhone 13. There are people that were offering me food at these places. Like they're like, "Yo, can we get you something? Do you want to eat some? Yo, we have some leftovers right here. Would you like anything?" I'm like, "I'm good, thank you." And then even the restaurant owners, the managers, I was in there so long from like, I was in there typing for hours and hours that, just with some meditation sessions in between where I would just, sit cross-legged, I would just close my eyes in the middle of all the noise and all the commotion. For some reason, it just helps me focus. So I would just be meditating, and then I would get back to typing, and then 25 minutes later, I was using the Pomodoro technique. So the Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break. So during those 5-minute breaks, I would do pranayama, I would breathe, and I would meditate. And then I would get back to work, get back to going. And the energy was flowing. Kids, men, women, and children, they're watching me. People are asking questions. And then even the managers of the restaurants would come by and be like, "Excuse me, sir." "Excuse me, sir. If you're not going to eat anything, then, you know, it's time to skedaddle, like, can you leave the premises, because we need you to order something." So I literally had to go up and get buy a whole cup of water. I had to just buy a cup, spend like $1 and change to buy something just to sit there in the restaurant and write these books. Yeah.
You find a way.
You find a way. You find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. Yeah.
I love that you go to different places too. Like somebody just commented the noise helped you focus, and so I don't know if that person heard, but he also worked at the library and then restaurants. So
Yeah.
touch on your process of what helps you focus besides the Pomodoro technique.
Right. So, the din of people sometimes helps me focus. Also, I have a playlist on my phone on YouTube. There were times where I was listening to, you ever seen that show House of Cards with Kevin Spacey? House of Cards? Okay,
I've heard.
there's a show on Netflix called House of Cards, and I would listen to the season soundtrack, just the season soundtrack. For some reason, it just got me in the mood, and I would just hone in and zone in, just listening to the soundtrack from the television show House of Cards. Because back when I was binge watching Netflix, for days, that was one of the shows that inspired me to just go higher, achieve great things. And even though the character was somebody who had, a lot of different motivations, that show was very inspirational for me to reach beyond what I thought I could grasp when it came to not procrastinating, not just, sitting, resting on my laurels, just sitting on my potential and really putting myself out there, see what happens when you bet on yourself. You've already been at the poker table betting on everyone else. What happens when you push the chips in and you bet on yourself, right? So that's what I'd be doing. And I'd be listening to that playlist and just typing away, and I'd be typing for hours, hours. Yeah.
Was there a shift of wanting to bet on yourself more, particularly this year, based on like how many books you've published within the span of like a few months? It's looking like 7 books since August of this year. 7 books. It loud people in the back. 7 books. Like what shifted of like I'm gonna like invest in myself and my potential, from the previous year? Like this
Yeah.
this excessive, like in the best of ways. So I'm curious what your process was. Was there a shift in the way that you were living your life? Were you drinking less liquids or more liquids or meditating, or you just read a book or whatever, or like you just felt more connected with God? Like what was that process? What was the fire? How did that
There's definitely a sacrifice. There's definitely a sacrifice for sure. If you're going to do more of something, logically, you will have to do less of something else. We only have so much time in a day, but if you're in a certain frequency, you have a lot of time in a day. Like there's a lot more time in a day than we realize. Like people don't actually realize. We say this all the time during Qigong, like right after the Qigong session, we'll say, like showing up for yourself, showing up for your health, your greatest inner wealth in life. And I will just congratulate people because I'm like, hey, you could have been anywhere, but you showed up here. And what a difference a single day makes. I'll always remind people what a difference a single day makes. And I learned this from reading a book by Jeff Olson called The Slight Edge that just taught me about the incremental changes that can happen over time. If you just do just little bits at a time, you can just incremental, and then at a certain point, the bell curve shoots up, right? So now I'm at a momentum. Now I'm in a rhythm. Now I'm in a flow where the habits, the atomic habits, are now becoming a lot more gargantuan. And I owe it as well to some people who have lit a fire within me. One of them is a lady named Katrina. She has a YouTube channel and as well as her Instagram. It's called Simple Raw Consciousness. Shout out to Katrina. Simple Raw Consciousness. Definitely go check her out. She told me not too long ago that she said, Jerome, because we were talking about John Maxwell. And if you know John Maxwell, this is a guy who's written over 200 books, over 200. And people like Stephen King, who's written so many books, and people who just, when I was looking at books that I was reading, I would go into these authors, and also namely fiction books. I would go into these authors' catalogs, and I would look at the spaces between their books and the dates that they wrote them. And I was like, what? How did they, huh? And I was looking at them, it was expanding my mind. Just like when I was around Elitom, seeing him not eating, not drinking, not using the restroom, like that expanded my mind. So when I saw this author that had been just putting out content left and right in a short span of time, like big content, I said, oh, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. This can be done. That inspired a lot more belief. Then talking to Katrina, when I talked to Katrina, Simple Raw Consciousness, she said, Jerome, why stop there, right? You're in such a flow state. You're in such a momentum. You have the escape velocity. The plane is taking off. It burns like so much fuel just taking off. You're already about to achieve the cruising altitude. You're climbing above the clouds. You're going to 30,000 feet. Why stop there? She said, just why not write 20, Jerome? Keep going. Keep going. Do you know, Celeste, when she said this, when she told me that, it was like she reached into my DNA and she just activated something in my DNA activated. And this woman, I've never met her in the physical, she reached into my body and she pulled out something that was already there, waiting to come to the surface. She said, Jerome, why stop there? She said, you'll never exhaust what wants to come through you. This is what she said. I can't make this up. She said, you'll never exhaust what wants to come through you. If it wants to come through you, let it come through, right? Let it do what it do, right? So I said, all right, let's find out. And that's the rest has been history, and we're still going. So yeah, there's been nights where I haven't even been sleeping because I just been up. It's just been going. Yeah.
Dude, I was traveling when you had texted, when we had talked about that, because I was like, yo, what's going on? And you're like, yo, like, I've had this conversation and this woman, and it shifted me. And I remember being like, wow, you go to Rome. Like, yes. And then, like, also, there are times where I text you because I'm typically a night owl. Sometimes I just stay up all night and I'm just in the mode fun. And I text you because I'm like, all right, this is what's going on right now. And you actually respond. And I'm just like, what? This guy's up too, and he's just knocking out books. Really beautiful to see. And when you were talking about it, you were talking about the habits that after a certain point of doing them, little habits, they start accumulating and going above the plateau. You know, it's and then eventually it curves up. It's like an exponential like climbing. And so you and I also talked about the top five. And so I'm wondering if the top five were the same throughout this whole like process. The top five, I forgot who it was that you told me, but the top five things that you do every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if those top five have been the same really throughout this whole writing process to the point where now you're doing the top five so frequently and it's just a natural flow and you've been able to add more and more that you're at the exponential point where you can pop out book like by month.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I also just go ahead.
I said, if you feel like sharing your top five and where you got it from and how that's impacted
Yeah.
trajectory.
Great question about the rule of five. Yeah, the rule of five. And also briefly, I just want to answer because Mergen is down here. Mergen is one of our Patreon supporters. Shout out to Mergen. Blessings, brother. Mergen Vandermeer. He's asking, he says, I always ask Source to let me be a tool in thy hands. Source always guides you. So definitely, I felt like that energy has been flowing through me and growing within me. It grows within you the more you continue. So it's just following your passion and your purpose and allowing that to become, it can become your profession. If you allow your passion to become your purpose, it can lead into a profession. So that's the progression. So with me, there's a Jerry Seinfeld technique. Jerry Seinfeld is, famous comedian. He wrote the whole show about nothing, Seinfeld. And there was a technique that is attributed to Jerry Seinfeld where he would mark his calendar. So on the calendar, he would mark, a red X. If he went a day doing, if he wrote a joke, he would do an X. So the next day he would write one more joke and he would do an X. So I was just crossing off, X's. And that was motivating me. And it was just letting me see visually my progress. That's another thing James Clear talks about in his book, Atomic Habits. It's like visually able to see incremental compounding progress, to see that you're okay, this was a win today. I wrote, 10,000 words today. That's a win. That's amazing. Like, okay, next day, let's see how much we can do tomorrow, So, that was definitely, part of the process of understanding like, okay, I did it yesterday, I can do it again. If I did it once, I can do it again. And allowing that to flow through. And then there was one other thing that you asked. What was the other thing that you asked? Oh, yes, the rule of five. So what was the rule of five? John Maxwell, he has a talk. You can type it in on YouTube. He's done it several times, but there's one in particular that I really love where he talks about the rule of five and what are five things that you can do every day. These could be like the highest priority things that serve the greatest amount of people that, that are meaningful and purposeful for you and fulfilling for you. So it's where your greatest gladness meets one of the world's greatest needs. And if you can have a rule of five for yourself, every day I read, every day I write, every day I meditate, every day I do Qigong, I do energy work, and every day I walk. So those would be my five, some of my five things that I do every day. Every day I walk, every day I have, these conversations, every day we do Qigong, every day I read, every day I write, every day. So yeah, I haven't really been missing any days when it comes to that, but there's like a progress principle that I've adopted that as long as I can just do one thing that is meaningful to me, that serves somebody, just one thing, then I'm good. You know, the rest of the day, I'm good. It doesn't matter what else I do. If I've done that one thing, it feels good to know that I've done that. Even one person I've affected for the positive, it's like, okay, we did it. Let's keep going. And it's just 24 hours. I don't think about next week. I don't think about next month. I don't think about next year. I think about 24 hours. What can I do in this 24 hours to not only expand myself, but to impact positively the life of someone else? So as long as we do those things, we're in a good spot. Yeah.
That's lovely. What I'm hearing is that you've chosen 5 things that feel nourishing to you and also serves others. You've found
Yeah.
5 top things amongst other things that you do every single day that feels nourishing to you and serves others.
Yeah.
And helpful to have a visual place where you can kind of cross it day by day, as you showed. And also by doing it day by day for a
Mhm.
long period of time, focusing on 24 hours a day, one day at a
Right.
one step at a time, one qigong class at a time, you know, over those amounts of like months and years, you've hitting the point where it's going to this like beyond plateau. It's just natural, it's exponential because it's just like an accumulation of habits. There's so much energy and love, like to be able to go just start flying,
Yeah.
you know. And all the process, there's this like allowance of this journey, you know, because some people get stuck in this point of like blocking it in whatever ways. Everyone has their own stuff, but like you have this awareness of, no, I have this inspiration. Like, why would I not do it? You know, so it's
Right.
beautiful. So within and also within this like trajectory, you've also kind of dove into nonfiction
Right.
writing. So like
Oh, you
the
mean
seven,
fiction? You mean fiction?
sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
fiction writing within the last 7 months. It's been the Breatharian Beginnings, the Chronic Living Unveiled, Food Freedom, the Solarian series.
Yeah.
And I had a question with the Solarian series. There was another book that had parentheses the Solarians. So I'm curious how the series, it said 1 of 3, and then it also had another book, The Way of Sun Fu. So
Yes.
share with the watchers about that whole fiction journey while you're on this trajectory of just popping out books, because it was like October 9th, October 13th, October 15th, like just the same month, you know? So if you could touch like on a little bit of how those books came about, because this is a new journey while still kind of touching on chronic living, you know? So hear more about that.
Yeah. So thank you, Celeste. Thank you for asking this because this has been my latest passion. And I delayed even telling people about this because the way that I operate, and this is not everybody, I know this is not everybody, but the way that I sort of get things done and the way that things have gotten done is that I just keep it to me and the universe, to me and source. It's just we're the only ones that know about it until it's done. And then once it's done, then I can let people know like, hey, guess here's what I've done and not here's what I'm doing. So this year I've kind of like played with, letting people know, hey, ahead of time a little bit, bringing some people into my world about like, hey, this is what I'm working on. Can you give me a little feedback? I would definitely receive that. But when it came to these books right now, my goodness. So these fictional novels, I'm just so passionate about this because when I was younger, I used to write fiction. I never was really into nonfiction ever. You know, I I came up reading fiction. I came up reading Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling and Lemony Snicket and all these different adventures and science fiction and fantasy and just all sorts of things that were taking me to worlds way beyond. And so those were my escapes in high school. Those were my escapes in middle school. There were times where I would even skip class to read a book. I was reading. And there were times where during the lunch break, what'd you say?
No, I just imagine you being like, no, I'm not going to school, I'm reading this book, bye.
Yeah, playing hooky. Yeah, we call it playing hooky. There were times where during the lunch break, there was one teacher in particular. It was a reading teacher. She was like either reading or social studies. She would let me read silently in her room while she was grading students' papers, away from all the other kids in the cafeteria. I would walk up to this teacher's room in silence and just come in, and she would let me sit down at the back of the class while she's on her computer grading papers, and I was just in the back reading for that whole block, for that whole period of time, just reading. And she was one of the people that nurtured that for me. I also think I told you about when I was in boarding school. When I was in that boarding school, there was a teacher that nurtured that for me, where I was first starting writing my books that were never finished. These are in the archives of one of my Yahoo emails that are like way, way, way back. Like when I still had jump drives. You remember jump drives where you put in them in and floppy disks and CD-ROMs. This was back, when I was putting stuff in. So I was saving my formatted like Microsoft Word document on these things, and it was inspiring me and other kids that were around me in the dormitory, because it wasn't co-ed, it was all boys school. So that was kind of building my confidence, but I never finished them. I never finished. And then years went by. So this is the first year since, over a decade ago, that I started back writing fiction. And I also have Nabiha to thank, because me and Nabiha, we were reading multiple books together. We're on Goodreads together, so we were reading like tons of series together. And one of the series we were reading was the Avatar series by F.C. Yee. So we were reading, about Avatar Kyoshi and Avatar Yang Chen and Avatar Roku, and we're reading about all these adventures. And so she was like, wow, I wish that there was a book, about the pranic journey or the pranic path or breatharianism, but like this, like a book like this, a fictional book like that. And I was like, what if I wrote something like that? Like, would you read something like that? If I wrote something like that, would you read something like that? She was like, heck yeah, I'd read it. That'd be awesome, Jerome. Do it. So I have Nabiha as well to thank, for me going off into fiction land. And yeah, it's been off to the races, because the first one, the Solarians, Orin's Ascension, that one really tapped into my childhood, a lot of childlike imagination, really just getting into the vibration of solar consciousness, solar energy, solar awareness, bringing that into the forefront, himself awakening to that, his abilities, and then awakening to his relationship with nature, his relationship with his body, his relationship with the sun, his relationship with his breath, his relationship with the all that is, and his relationship with energy. And so he's not only learning that from mentors, which is a parallel for my journey, I learned that from mentors, but he's teaching that to other people. And they say when you teach something, you learn it twice. So he's understanding the role of a role model, a mentor, and he's having mentees and people that he's passing that energy along, paying it forward. Then in, Ambassador of Light, the next one right after that, it's basically more of his journey going into, I don't know how deep you want me to go into these books. I don't know how you.
It's great. I love this.
Okay. Okay. So the next one, Ambassador of Light, Oren's, he's with Electra and Serafina, different characters that were established in the first book. And they're going on different adventures as well. But this is even more, the scope has been broadened. Now there are villains in this, there are real villains with backstory, with character, with just, political machinations, like just different aspirations and different things that they feel is true for them. And they don't want the world to know that they can awaken. Like they don't want humanity. They're really against humanity opening up to their own power, opening up to their own realization and recognition of what their bodies actually are, what the sun actually is, what nature actually can do if we allow it, So he's kind of fighting against that, but trying to do it peacefully, sort of like Martin Luther King and Gandhi, sort of trying to peacefully protest against the people that are, really trying to hamper down on all of the awakening and the awareness in society. So the Solarian society is really trying to broaden the scopes of humanity and understand that, hey, we can do a lot more than we ever thought that we could. And here's how. So he's one of those people, one of those guiding lights. And that's his story. But I love in the Avatar series, some of my most favorite characters were the villains, because the villains didn't think that they were villains. Like the villains, they had their own motivations and they had their own reasoning, but they thought that their way was the right way. And they were just trying to get other people to understand. There's a quote, George Bernard Shaw said a quote that, the reasonable person adapts themselves to the world, but the unreasonable person persists in having the world adapt to themselves. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable. He said, you must be unreasonable, right? You're not conforming to the societal norm. You're able to grow and transform into something different, and then other people see what's possible. Like Roger Bannister, 1954, running the 4-minute mile, a mile in 4 minutes. Nobody thought that could be done. Nobody thought that was possible. Then he did it. All it took, one person is all it took. So in these books, Oren is one of those people that are showing humanity what's possible for them. And the villains, I just love the villains in that book. The senator, Senator Evelyn Graves, and also Cassandra Valen. Just the way that, I was able to just put a lot of the stuff that I've been learning into that. It really came a lot through. So then the next one, Psychology of the Soul. Oh, and right before that was The Way of Sun Fu. You were asking about The Way of Sun Fu. So that's kind of like a prequel story to Oren's story. He meets Shui Ming in the first book, but this is all about Shui Ming's journey in The Way of Sun Fu. And it's just a play on words, Sun Fu, Kung Fu. You're dealing with solar energy, but you're in a martial arts format. So he's training at the dojo. And of all the fictional books that I've done so far, that one really felt like a masterpiece. Like it felt like I really was able to channel and put these, like Jackie Chan and Jet Li and, Mr. Miyagi, Karate Kid, like these instructional wisdoms and teachings that could be reaching, but they're not like preaching, right? They're not like preaching, but they're teaching and they're reaching at a deep level, because this person, Shui Ming, has to go through and grow through these things in a way that Master Dao Zhang challenges him to break out of his own paradigm, to challenges him to do something different that he's never done before, in order for him to see himself. Like he's not telling him the truth. He's just pointing. He's just a guide that's pointing to something he's going to discover on his own, right? And then the next one, Psychology of the Soul. That's the most dark. That's the most dark book I've ever written. That's the most dark book I've ever channeled, and I just want to let that one speak for itself. You be the judge, but there's a lot of light in that book, but there's a lot of darkness. So I had to deep dive into my own darkness, because I've experienced, just visually, I've experienced a lot of darkness in life, and I channeled a lot of that in the book, but I also had to draw comparisons with the sun is still there, the light is still there. Even if the clouds are in the way, even if you don't see it during the day, it's still shining. So if you can't see the light, be the light, right? If you can't see the light, can you free the light from within you and allow it to shine to everyone else, and let that be the light that touches, So that book, whew, that was the one. So yeah.
It sounds like a similar progression of the other group of books that we were previously discussing, of how it just keeps getting deeper and deeper within each story, but also within yourself, and it's reflected in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Really beautiful. And I also love seeing how, like, source, God, higher power, higher intelligence, Lord, whatever title you want to put, label you want to put to that energy, has always been there with you, even from the very beginning, placing these teachers in your life to give you a space to be able to do what you want, which was in that first section, was you want to read, you want to explore, you want to learn what other people are creating, and go dive into their stories and see stories. And then the other phase of like, wow, now I have the space to write, I feel inspired and I want to write, I want to do that too. You're surrounded by students that were willing to read your work too, which is so beautiful. And then now you're at this place of, like applying what you've learned from so many different teachers, and like hitting that point of applying your own daily habits, and that, progression to now writing fiction books. And when you're talking about it, it's like, wow, it's almost like your story. And then also it's not, it's this whole other world,
Yeah.
like solid blend, like you said, of karate and martial arts, and also like avatars, and but also this like foundation of chronic living. And it's just, I that's the perfect gap, that you were talking at the beginning of this conversation, which is like, wow, I found a gap and it just flowed.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a perfect gap based on your lived experience of how you grew up and where you are right now, and your path on the chronic living journey.
Right.
Then now you kind of meshed it all together. And
Right.
it's beautiful to see. I'm so curious to read these. They're very newly published, and I have not skimmed even the surface, but even hearing you talk about it makes me want to read it even more.
Mm.
So I feel really excited about it. I'm sure other people will be really excited about it too.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Just I so many things that have shaped my character, just who I am and what I'm about, just the principles that I have for myself. It's come through books, and they weren't necessarily nonfiction. Like a ton of them were straight up fiction, complete fiction. Like these were made up characters, made up worlds from someone's imagination. But when I latched on to the characters, when I felt deeply the characters, when I empathized with the characters, and I connected with these characters, and just, it was like I was living in someone else's world, even though that person didn't technically exist. When you take the role of someone and you're learning the lessons they're learning, you're overcoming the trials they're overcoming, you're overcoming the adversity and the obstacles that they're having to go through in order to learn more. It's like you're doing it yourself, you know? So that had such an effect on my psyche that I was like, wow, can I put out something that could do that, that could give me that feeling? Can I do that for someone else? And so, yeah, I'm really excited to hear the response from people who get their hands on these books, because it just gives me so much joy. There's nothing else that I want to do at this moment. I don't know about later on. Like I said, at this moment, that's all I want to do. People were literally asking me, "What are you going to do for your birthday?" I'm like, "Shh, I'm doing it. I'm doing it now. I'm doing it now." So every day feels like my birthday right now. Yeah.
I love that. Every day feels like my birthday.
Yeah.
Really get that from you. I feel when I texted you earlier, you were like, "Oh, thanks for reminding me about my birthday." The book giveaway. Like this guy, because literally you live that, like you live it. Of every day is my birthday. It's another beautiful day. It's refreshing to be around, because sometimes we get in our heads and we get lost, and the goals that we want to reach in, a month or a year, and you're just so present. It really it ripples out everyone that you interact with. Really, like that's all I hear. Other people. It's so lovely to see, and I know that people will feel that in your writing, because I felt it while I was editing the book. Like I could feel it. I was like, wow, like this is so Jerome, like it really is, and it's so informative, intellectual, and also personable. So because you're taking in all this information that you've gathered from other people, and then also your lived experience, and then you have this beautiful way of writing it. It's so simple and direct, yet like encouraging and humble. So I can only imagine how these fiction books have the similar effect to it, of like just you honing in that like divine divinity within yourself, just going through your arm into your tiny little computer Timo pad, and then into the screen, and then to books, like books. Like it's so beautiful. I feel excited for you, and I know that you're somebody that likes to, just do things on your own, and then one day, boom, 333-page book published. I'm like, what? Jerome, I thought we were editing that book. You mean you've been writing this whole other book this whole time? And I had zero idea. So like you are one to just like do things in your own pace in your solitude, and it's like really impressive.
Yeah.
Although I want to ask if you have an idea like what your next project is, where you're at right now. You just published this last one, The Psychology of Soul. So I'm curious where you're at right now. Like what's your next 24 hours look like? What's this next week look like? When
Right.
continuing this excitement of writing.
Yeah. And thank you for asking that. And just, I'm really excited for what's coming, beyond the horizon. And by the way, just as you were saying, Celeste, like it seems like a lot, but to me, it doesn't. When I'm looking, it's almost like they say when you're resting on the shoulders of giants, like when you stand on the shoulders of giants that have come before you, you can see further. You can see further. Like your viewpoint is different. So what someone else thinks is amazing, I'm like, shh, you should see, you should see what we really could, like I'm inspired to go higher because I see what can really be done in just a little amount of time. That's inspiring me, to give more. You're like, you know, and there was one thing I haven't mentioned, but it's never been easier. Like if people realized, I think if I could give one message to everyone listening to this, like that doesn't even have anything to do about reading my books. It's about writing your own. If you have an idea, or if you have something in your spirit, something in your soul that you want to get out, that you want to let it come through you, don't wait. Don't wait. Like you know, I know it's been said so many times, but tomorrow really isn't promised. Like all we have is now. I walk every day, from here, I walk the 5 mile walk from here to the grocery store and back. And, those cars are zooming, on the road. They're boom, boom, boom. Big trucks. We live in Texas. I'm in Texas. Everything's big out here, right? Big, big this, big that. And they're just zooming. I mean, they almost hit, my cat months ago that I have now. Now I have my cat. He was on the side of the road. So at any point in time, somebody who's just looking at their phone, they could just, their hand on the steering wheel, I could be gone, right? At any point. Now, this is not saying that I want to be gone. I know I have a lot more life to live. I know I have more things to do. But the reality is, no one is promised another day. So when I looked at that, I was like, okay, like it's up to me. Like, am I gonna just make this happen, or am I gonna wait until the perfect time? Am I gonna wait until the perfect time, or am I gonna take this time and make it perfect? Right? Let me make this perfect with the time that I have at my disposal. I don't know what next year's gonna bring. I have no idea, but I do know what right now. So when I was reading books like the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, books like The Art of War by Sun Tzu, these books were teaching me, do what is difficult while it is still easy. They said, do what, this is from Eastern philosophy. These people, that lived centuries ago, they said, do what is difficult while it is still easy. And if I have one message for everyone listening that wants to put out something like a book or just put out anything, it's never been easier than it is right now. And it's only getting easier. Don't think it's hard. It's the mind. It's actually easy. When you realize how easy it is, you will wonder what took you so long. That's what I wondered. I was in a seminar. The guy's name was Eric Ho back in the day. He had a YouTube channel. Now he goes by Master Sri Akarshana. He told the crowd, Celeste, he told the whole crowd, I wrote this book. This was years ago. He said, I wrote this book that I published on Amazon in 4 hours on the subway, on the train, heading to my next destination. I wrote this book on my cell phone in 4 hours and published it within the week. When he told us that, it was a book, a little book. You can look it up on Amazon. It's called Set It and Forget It. Little book. Set It and Forget It. He wrote that book on a train on his phone years ago, way before all this technology that we have now. And he was telling that to the audience. Now, I was in the audience. This was in San Diego at a convention, at a seminar. You know, half of the audience were like, oh, okay, nice. The other half of the audience was like, I was in that half. I was in that half like, wait a minute, hold on. Right? And so I walked out of that seminar with that just one piece of information that said, I can do it. It's possible, and do it now. Right? Don't wait, because it's never been easier. Like, you're waiting on this to happen. You're waiting on that. All of these things, they're right here. So what's coming up next that I'm excited for, to answer that question, is, you know, this one is a cyberpunk genre, and it's a totally new genre. I haven't ventured into this one, but I love movies like The Matrix. That's my favorite movie of all time. I've probably seen it at least 300 times, at least. And that's very heavily influenced in this book that I'm currently writing. So just breaking out of that consciousness, very heavily meditated, right? Like the shirt, heavily meditated. Those influences are in this book for sure, but it's also about just the cyber world, the technological world, the digital world, and the effects of digital technology on the mind, the effects of it on our social aspect, our conversation. You know, can we still have the same relations? Can we still have the same conversation when we're in the digital vibration all day long, right? And it's really just drawing back influences from me when I used to sit in front of video games all day long, and how that affected my relationship, my connection with other human beings. We delve into that in this book that I'm writing right now. And just the state of VR, you know, virtual reality, our technological advancements, I'm giving it all credit. You know, it's amazing what we're doing right now. It's amazing. But also just the humanity, the human aspect of where we're going, where it's leading us, and just how it could be creating certain things that we have not accounted for. That's what I dive into this book, just the realm of that understanding. Hey, you know, let's not forget who we are. Like, let's remember who we are. So, yeah.
I love that. The Solarian series seemed like it was a progression of the person learning for themselves and then teaching others, and then it hit the point of it being a systematic political issue, and then breaking through it and going to the psychology of the soul, which is like like acknowledging the darkness of it all, you know, because there's so much light, and then there's darkness, and there's yin and yang, and there's beautiful destruction and birth, rebirth. It's all divine, you know. And so I love that now this next series is going to be focused on technology.
Yes. Yeah.
Huge. That's such a relatable topic, and the way that you're writing it is so beautiful, because it makes complete sense. And like with the Matrix, like touch to it. You're like, I've never touched in this genre before. I'm like, nah, man, 300 times. I'm like, yeah, you've touched this genre. Plenty. Got Neo by your side. I mean, come on. Come on.
Neo's here. Neo. He's here somewhere. Yeah.
So,
oh man.
Every time you were going up and down, he was like jumping up on your leg.
Yeah. Oh man, I forget that people can actually see that. Can actually see him jumping up. Yeah. He's always on me. He's always, you know, just always around me. Just, yeah. Whenever he's not sleeping, he just wants to be on me. You know.
So adorable. Gosh, we could talk for hours. I have so many questions.
I'm here for you. Yeah.
I just, I think it's so beautiful that you met an animal companion, a fur companion, while you were on the journey. I feel like it's been beautiful for you, like, to have that little fur companion with you.
Yeah.
Somebody with you in the song the other day, or if you were talking to Neo, but you like looked over there, and you were like, yeah, blah blah blah, and I was like, who's he talking to? Mr. Solitude Hermit, one man band, and I was like, it's probably Neo. His black was that is that
You
it?
got me.
Yeah.
You got
So I love seeing those interactions because I feel, at least in my personal life right now, I'm seeing how impactful the relationship is with
me.
animals. Like I like they're animals. If you've had an like the honor of taking care of an animal for a longer period of time, like they're your soul friends also.
Mhm.
They may not be humans, but they're part of your life for a long period of time, and depending on your relationship with them, and I'm just going based off my partner and her experience, and then a friend, their experience, and they're just talking about like how, and then another person, a host of the house sits that I did, the same thing. They're all telling me like, wow, this animal saw parts of me in specific phases of my life that nobody else saw. And they were there for me. They loved me unconditionally. Anytime I was upset, excited, or whatever, and anything in between, they were there. Just there being and loving. And it's so, for people that haven't experienced that, they may not understand like how impactful it is when, let's say, those friends as companions pass on, you know? I'm seeing people grieve right now, their companions, their fur companions, and it's almost as if losing a human friend or a human partner. Like it's that deep, you know. So I just feel like it's important to acknowledge that, and I feel excited for you to, because I remember when you found Neo, there's this like, I don't know if I'm gonna, like, if this is meant for me right now, time of my life, you know. And over time, I've just seen you bond with him. And granted, zero attachment, he's going to be in your life for the next 10, 20 years. Like, yeah, it's completely your choice. But I've enjoyed on the outside seeing you bond with him. And I think it's hilarious that you named him Neo. And then you're talking about The Matrix and that being your favorite movie. And then now the next book that you're writing is kind of in that genre. So it's all connected. I wanted to touch base on it because I'm realizing, like, wow, this is a real thing that I feel like people don't talk about. Like, the grieving process for companions is a real thing.
Yeah.
It's connection, and I like seeing you nurture that connection wherever it goes for you. But like Neo, it's been a joy for me watching him and how you interact with him, like these last few months. Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
he's like your co-author. I think you should put that in your next book. And
Oh my God.
I also liked how you recently said that it's about the belief. It really boils down to the belief of believing that somebody's capable of sharing their light.
Mm.
You're right now sharing it in a way of books and writing, and that's beautiful. And so many people do have that like inclination to go in that direction. I also
Mhm.
acknowledge that there's so many different directions that you can share your life. Like it can so many. Like find the thing that I would like readers or watchers to hear from me in this live is that there's so many different realms, like pathways you can go. And the way that Jerome said it was like, I found my gap. And this is so potent because we all have this like unique gap, and sometimes multiple gaps, you know, like it's limitless depending on how you view yourself and how limiting how many limiting beliefs you have. It's like getting out of your own way and really opening yourself to receiving like the possibilities of which gaps you could even fill,
Mm.
which excite you.
Yeah.
It could be painting, it could be interviewing, it could be writing books, it could be so many things. It could be skating, it could be dancing, it could be acting. There's just so many, editing, like director, like just there's just an endless amount. And I pray that everyone can kind of get out of their own way. Like you said, there's a believing that it's easy, believing that it's possible. And yes, there's this aspect of it being like in this technological world, it can be difficult because there's like so many distractions available. Yet the technology has been so helpful if you can use it and use it for the filling gap. And you've done a beautiful job of focusing on that because it's easy to get distracted, and
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice, but it is a choice. And like hone that belief and that empowerment within yourself, and like recognizing how you get to choose what you're focusing on, and building the habit, building those awareness muscles, focus muscles, and the diligence, the strong determination to whatever, like if you're at the point where you're like opening to receive to a gap, or if you already know the gap and you're already in it, or you've been filling the gap and you're like, yo, other gaps open, now I'm like filling 10. Wherever you are on that journey, it's just a matter of continuously coming back to that belief in yourself that like your light is worth sharing. So I I pray that everyone can get a little sprinkle in their hearts and feel like their light is worth sharing. What you have to say is valuable, and I encourage you to day by day figure out what feels most inspiring so that you can focus on something that inspires you, because that fire is enough. It's enough. You're enough, and that fire is enough, and it's so. I appreciate you, Jerome, for now. Like you're at the point where you're the one leading by example for so many people. You know, like I know that you're so humble, and I love that about you. And I also want to shine light that you are the one, or one of many, that are really paving the way for people right now. It's so beautiful. Like it's so beautiful. It's impactful, and I like seeing you grow. I like seeing people kind of open their minds just by either being around you, watching interviews, or now reading your books. Like it's really beautiful, and I know we all have the capability of doing that in our own way. I want to acknowledge you recently said like these giants. You know, now I'm stepping on the shoulders of these giants, and it's like you are that giant for some people. You are that giant for some people. You've impacted so much, like this so much. Even just editing your book. Oh my gosh, like I just completed my first days of dry fasting and water fasting, like for a long time, you know. But I actually like focused and put action to it, and you were such a big part of that journey, like just being. So I see these exchanges, and I'm like, wow, we are so blessed. Like the aspect of like we can stay connected even with distance. You're in Texas and I'm California, yet I still feel the closest I've ever felt to you, you know? And then just being in person is always a treat. And so like when we focus on those aspects and continue using them to our advantage and bonds and community like this, I feel like it's the possibilities are truly endless. And I just I love it. I feel grateful. I feel blessed, and I feel grateful that you came on to this live and we talked about it, because the back behind the scenes has been really interesting for me to be a part of with you. And I'm like, yo, other people they've got to know what's going on in Jerome's head. Giant, like what path has he done? What is he feeling? Because if on the outside they look like it's so effortless, but you share like the progression, you know. You start up here, like you started over here or wherever, and everyone's going to start wherever they're going to start, but like it's helpful to hear people's processes. I feel like when we have more of these conversations, other people are able to see the reality of the situation, is that we're all going through very similar things in our own unique ways. So grateful for you coming today and sharing us around these books. And I would love to do more interviews, like diving into the books like more deeply, because I know that they're whole universes book. But for now, I feel really grateful for you kind of giving an overview of like where, like how this became, like where you started even writing and reading as a child, and then all the people that have influenced you, like the giants that influenced you, and also friends that just planted seeds within you, and your like strength and resilience to be able to water those seeds. And then now you're forest, and you're just so welcoming to everyone to come in your forest and pick whichever fruits, and because it's just abundant. So I we can talk about so many. We could talk about different types of trees, forests. We could talk about the fruits, talk about the soil, talk about your farming techniques. Like we could go on and on. But like for this call, I want to close with this, like letting people know, or this encouragement to share their light, because it can be easy, like you said, it can be that easy,
Right.
if we believe.
Right. Yes. The belief. Yes. Oh my God. I receive that. I receive all of it. And just, Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for saying everything, you know. It hits right here. Right here. Thank you. Yeah.
Love you.
Much love. Much love. Oh my God.